Hey folks, how you guys doing? I hope everybody's having a decent weekend. It is Sunday here in Colorado, and I wanted to go ahead and create this video to talk about a question I got in my comment section of my last video, and this video is going to be a follow-up to that video. But what the gentleman basically asked me was that he actually was taking finasteride for a good while, and he had no issues with the drug, but then he read one of the horror stories from Propecia Help or some Propecia support group or something, and because of that, he convinced himself that the side effects were real, and he feels that he gave himself a nocebo effect, and he asked me whether or not he thinks this is crazy and what he can do about that. And I want to answer the question, but I also want to go ahead and go further into that and talk about finasteride side effects in general and what people can do to mitigate some of the side effects. And the reason why is because even though I stand by everything I said in the last video, I do think that the persistent long-term side effects of finasteride are bullshit. There's no solid in vivo studies that prove any of the claims that any of these people make. I didn't want to come across as dismissive of people who really are suffering from finasteride side effects, because finasteride is a pharmaceutical, and all pharmaceuticals without exception have side effects. In fact, anything that works has side effects, and this goes even for like natural treatments. Like we know that saw palmetto acts as kind of like a weak alpha-5 reductase inhibitor, so it's kind of like a weak finasteride. Even that can cause side effects. So people who turn to natural remedies as a means of avoiding side effects are not doing themselves any favors. So anyways, even though I have not experienced any side effects with finasteride, I've been in the hair loss community, and I've spoken with enough people to know that side effects are legit, and there are some things you can do to mitigate side effects. But I also want to disclose that for some individuals, even though the side effects of finasteride are very rare, there is nothing you can do about it. I mean, like, the side effects will be there even if you do like everything to mitigate the side effects, even if you're taking other drugs to help counter the side effects. In some cases, you're going to get side effects, in which case finasteride is not for you if you're not willing to deal with those side effects. So you may want to consider some topical anti-androgen in that case. You can look at some experimentals for your research subject, like RU58841, CB0301, or if you want something that's less experimental, you can try alpha-tridiol, which is a topical estrogen, which is a bit obscure, but it does work. I'd compare it to kind of like a weak RU, and it is a good treatment as either a standalone treatment or as a adjunct treatment for existing treatments like stamoxidine or minoxidil, growth stimulants like that. So it is a fairly strong anti-androgen. It may not be good enough for everybody. It's not going to be as good as finasteride or dutasteride, but it does work. So anyways, veering off subject a little bit here, so let's get back on point. So what are some of the things that people can do to mitigate the side effects of finasteride? So if you talk to any doctor about this, and I do recommend talking to your doctor, because keep in mind, I'm not a medical professional. I'm just an individual with a lot of experience fighting hair loss, and I do recommend before anyone begins treatment that they certainly talk to their doctor and get their thumbs up and approval from that. So the first thing any doctor will tell you if you're experiencing side effects from finasteride is that they'll tell you to lower the dose. So finasteride is not a direct DHT inhibitor. What it is that it's an inhibitor of the alpha-5 reductase enzyme, and a lot of people already know that. And the alpha-5 reductase enzyme, what that does is that stops the conversion of testosterone into DHT, and there's only so much testosterone it can stop converting into DHT. It suppresses about like 68% for the standard dosage right there. But what a lot of people don't know about finasteride is that it has diminishing returns. So even though the standard 1 milligram or 1.25 milligram dose that we get, which can either come from taking a Propecia tablet, which is the finasteride that's made for male pattern baldness, or by quartering a Proscar tablet, which is a 5 milligram tablet, which can be quartered into 1.25 milligram doses. And Proscar is the one that's made for enlarged prostate, because those are the two official uses for finasteride. What a lot of people don't know is that finasteride has very strong diminishing returns, and as a result of that, taking 5 milligrams isn't much stronger than taking 1 or 1.25 milligrams, and furthermore, taking half a milligram or 1.25 or even a quarter of a milligram isn't that much weaker than taking a full milligram. And in fact, in a lot of countries, I believe in South Korea, the standard prescribed dose for finasteride for the treatment of male pattern baldness is in fact just a quarter of a milligram per day. And as a result of that, a lot of people are getting side effects from finasteride, and they can avoid it if they just were to lower their dose a little bit. So that's the first thing I'd recommend, is think about lowering your dose. So Finasteride will outright kill the alpha-5 reductase enzyme, and it will lower DHT as soon as you start using it. But even if you stop using it, it's going to take a couple days for your DHT levels to get back to normal. So people can not only drop their dosage, they can also drop their frequency. They can use it once every other day. And I know some people who drop it so use it so infrequently that it's just like twice per week. And I don't know if I necessarily recommend that. I mean, if you're having some real issues with finasteride side effects, maybe give that a try. That's certainly better than nothing. But the issue is that people are using more finasteride than they typically need to. I mean, I personally use 1.25 milligrams of finasteride per day, but I do that because I know it's easy for me to keep track of. But I have used half a milligram a day. I've used half a milligram every other day, and that worked just as well as far as I know. I mean, looking at the studies, it's shown that 1 milligram of finasteride suppresses only about like maybe 8 or 10% more DHT than a half milligram of finasteride. So that really isn't too substantial. That should be enough suppression for most people. That is unless, of course, you're really, really sensitive to male pattern baldness, like if you started losing your hair when you were in your teens. So in most cases, I think just lowering your dose is a dose of finasteride is good enough. And if you're interested in lowering your dose, I'd recommend getting one of these. This is a pill cutter, and you can find these at any pharmacy. Just talk to your pharmacist, and he'll give you one of these, or you can just find it like, at Target, CVS Pharmacy, just Tesco, wherever you live. You can get one of these very easily. You don't need a prescription or anything. So I use this for Proscar. Proscar is a 5 milligram tablet. So you can actually take a Propecia tablet or a generic Propecia, which I recommend because it is the exact same drug, and you can just quarter that and you can get a 1/4 milligram, or you can have it to get half a milligram. And if you're worried about starting finasteride because of side effects, that's a good way to kind of wean yourself into it. You can just start with a very low dose and see how you respond to it. Just take it like an aspirin and forget about it. Don't focus on any of the horror stories because, like I said, there's that risk of a nocebo effect where if you think something bad will happen, your brain will convince yourself that it is going to happen, kind of like the opposite of a placebo, where you can convince yourself that something you're taking actually does have a good effect because you really believe it. So ignore all that. Just take it like an aspirin. Forget about it. Wait a little while. See how you respond to it in your daily life, and don't focus too much on the side effects. And after a little while, if you feel comfortable, you can even increase your dose a little bit, or you can just stay at that dose if you feel it's working well enough. But keep in mind, anything you try, you want to probably give it at least 3 to 6 months to decide if it's working, because hair growth is a process that doesn't happen like in a few weeks. I mean, it can take several months for a hair follicle to go back into the anagen phase, which is the growth phase. And when you start a treatment, you actually accelerate the anagen phase, and as a result of that, a lot of the old hairs will fall out and new hairs will go in, and that's why people, they get an initial shedding a lot of times when they start a new hair loss treatment. That's nothing to be alarmed of. Stay on your treatment even if that happens, because it will stabilize, and in the end you'll have more hair, because as the old hairs are falling out, new hairs, stronger hairs will grow in. So it's important not to freak out about the shed. So anyways, that's one method. And another method I want to talk about, and this one's a little bit more controversial. However, this isn't just me pulling shit on my ass. This is something doctors will mention as a treatment for some people who get side effects from finasteride. One thing you could do is that, first of all, it's vital you talk to your doctor about this, because the treatment I'm recommending could potentially have effects on cholesterol levels, and that could increase your risk of hypertension. And hypertension itself can cause side effects, including sexual side effects. So it's very, very important you talk to your doctor about this. But talk to him about going on a very, very low dose of an aromatase inhibitor. Some examples include like Arimidex. And I'm not going to say the dose specifically because I don't want to risk people like self-medicating. All I'm going to say is talk to your doctor about going on a very low dose of an aromatase inhibitor. And for those who don't know what an aromatase inhibitor is, an aromatase inhibitor prevents the conversion of testosterone into estrogen. And the reason why that's important is because finasteride actually raises testosterone a little bit. It actually raises it by about 9% or so. And as a result of that, some people who get side effects, it's speculated, it's hypothesized, not known entirely for sure, that the reason why some people get side effects is that some of that testosterone will aromatase and turn into estrogen. And of course, estrogen works as a indirect anti-androgen, and it's much less, and of course, testosterone is very, very important. If you're lowering testosterone, you're going to have side effects like water retention, you're going to have erectile dysfunction, low libido, and everything like that. So if your estrogen levels are high, and you can figure out by getting blood work, then make sure you talk to your doctor about this and ask about an aromatase inhibitor, and possibly he can put you on a very small dose of an aromatase inhibitor. I mean, it could be, if it's dosed properly, you can avoid a lot of the cholesterol-related side effects, and you can further mitigate the damage by eating a very clean, healthy diet, like, avoiding a excess amount of dietary cholesterol and saturated fat. But that is something you can do if you think the reason why you're getting side effects from finasteride is a result of the estrogen, which is very much possible, since any increase in testosterone, even a small increase for some people, can cause some aromatization. So that's one thing you do. And another thing I'm going to bring up as far as avoiding side effects with finasteride is that you can actually consider topical finasteride. Now, I have a video about like how to compound your own solution. I used a very, very small, a very diluted solution. I don't want to call it like homeopathic, but I only used a 1.25 milligram tablet, and I put it in about 6 milliliter solution. And the reason why I used 6 milliliter in the solution, which was tamoxifen, you can use other solvents. You can use alpha tradiol. You can use the K and B solution. You can even make your own propylene glycol alcohol solution, but there's a lot of viable solutions. But the thing about topical finasteride is that some of it still goes systemic, but it's at least hypothesized, and I think there's actually at least one study showing that the chances of side effects are reduced if you use topical finasteride. And there's also a lot of chemical research websites online. I think like Polychem Solutions does sell a topical finasteride that is officially for chemical research purposes, because it's not actually been approved for human consumption. I mean, I've used that before, and it does work. It's legitimate. But one thing that does concern me about it is that the concentration of finasteride is pretty remarkably high. So I feel that if somebody is worried about finasteride side effects, they may not want to go for a really, really high dosage of even topical finasteride, because if you get side effects from oral finasteride and then some of it goes systemic, then that might be a problem. But I think just logic would dictate that a topical solution probably has a lower risk of side effects than an oral solution right there. So that's what I wanted to talk about as far as like reducing your risk of side effects with finasteride. Now, as far as like the nocebo effect goes, as far as like worrying about like whether or not it's causing you like side effects because you heard a bad story and now you're convincing yourself that it's bad, what you want to do is that you just want to focus on like the direct opposite of that, because you want to focus on the more positive stories that people have had with it. Like me personally, I was really worried about the side effects of finasteride for a while too. I had been on it for years, and around in like 2011 2012 I came across those stories, and I was really, really terrified when I read them. And then all of a sudden, like, one morning, maybe I'd wake up and my wouldn't have morning wood, and I'd think, oh my God, it's the fucking finasteride. Or, like a really hot chick walks by and, I don't get turned on right away. And I think, oh my God, it's the finasteride. But then I just took a couple steps back, and I realized that, those kind of things would happen to me even before I took finasteride. I mean, those things are totally normal. I mean, it's just normal for men to like, sometimes have slight drops in their libido, or, like slight increases in their libido. And, what I'd do is that I'd actually focus on like, the positive anecdotal experiences that people have had with it. Like people would say that like, oh, since taking finasteride, it's actually like increased my libido a little bit because of the raise of testosterone. And that may be true. Maybe those people really did experience that, but it's important to focus on things like that, because if you're focusing on the positive, you're less likely to focus on the negative. And it kind of makes sense. Like the way I think about it when I'm taking finasteride is that I think about, testosterone is the good main male hormone. That's the hormone that's most responsible. I mean, the testosterone is the male hormone that's most responsible for building strength and muscle. It has significantly more role in skeletal muscle activity and sexual health than DHT. And I think that by when I take finasteride, what I'm doing is that I just remind myself that I'm preserving that good testosterone by preventing some of it from getting converted into DHT. And I remind myself that DHT is just the trash hormone that doesn't really have any discernible role in adults outside of like doing negative things, like giving us acne, causing us hair loss, or enlarging the prostate. Like DHT, it has some role in sexual maturation, so it's important in adolescence, and that's why I think it's especially important for teenagers to talk to their doctors before taking finasteride. But as far as adults go, I mean, it's really obscure if DHT plays any role at all. I mean, there's like millions and millions of men who safely suppress their DHT levels like every year, and they have no issues. Like, you hear people saying, oh, everybody gets side effects from suppressing their DHT. It's an essential hormone, but that's complete bullshit, because I'll tell you, testosterone is an essential hormone for maintaining male virility and just sexual health and just keeping us as men. Like if men suppress testosterone, if they take something like spironolactone, for instance, then 100% of men are going to experience side effects because testosterone is the main male hormone. Yet, if DHT is so vital, then how come so many millions of men suppress it and don't have any issues whatsoever? So, the cause of DHT side effects, I don't think it's as simple as just lower DHT equals side effects. I think it may have something to do with like neurosteroids. I mean, there's some mechanistic information that points to like, DHT or, suppressing, taking finasteride could have a role in like the chemistry of the brain and yada, yada, yada. But, the thing about mechanism, like I talk about, it's very, very complex. I mean, even when we look at the mechanism behind finasteride, chances are we're only getting like a fraction of what's actually going on. And that's why it's much better to rely on like in vivo studies that are tested on actual human beings. And if you look at the people who are like complaining about finasteride, they represent a very, very small minority of people. And one thing I want to talk about as far as prolonged side effects go is that a lot of these people are probably getting like side effect. I mean, I think a lot of what these people are experiencing might be legit, but it's more questionable to blame it on finasteride because if you look at like the individuals on these forums like Propecia Help, like I said in my last video, they really are some of the saddest life forms you can ever imagine. I mean, a lot of them, by their own admission, are suffering from depression. They're suffering from like cardiovascular health problems, obesity. A lot of them are diabetic. And guess what? Every single one of those can cause erectile dysfunction and sexual health. I mean, and impair your sexual health in some way. Like depression can certainly cause erectile dysfunction. Obesity can cause erectile dysfunction because of hypertension. Diabetes can cause erectile dysfunction because of nerve damage. And erectile dysfunction is pretty freaking common. About 30% of people, 30% of men, I should say, experience some degree of erectile dysfunction. And I think there's a very good chance that as a result of taking finasteride, they just became more conscientious of their own erectile dysfunction that they took for granted before because of all the horror stories they read. And that's why I stress it's very important to ignore all that bullshit and just focus on the positive things you've heard about finasteride. Because, for every one psychotic loon talking about how finasteride made them shorter or how they made their anus numb, and I'm not pulling that out of my ass. If you go to their forum, which I don't recommend, people actually say stuff like that. There's going to be like 1,000 other people talking about how finasteride basically saved their lives. And I'm one of those people. Finasteride really saved my confidence. And, there's been a lot of things I've done to improve my confidence, going to the gym, lifting weights, losing weight. But none of that compares to the confidence boost I got from actually saving my hair with finasteride. And that's why I can't stress it enough that people take finasteride while they still have a chance because, time is of the essence and, you don't want to have to worry about getting hair transplants. I mean, if you need a hair transplant, that's fine, but they're very expensive. A lot of times you don't get good results for them. So the best golden solution, of course, is not losing hair to begin with. And the only way to do that as of 2019 is to get on treatment before it's too late. And the more and more people hear about these side effects, the more hesitant they are to actually start treatment, which is a shame because I can't imagine the number of people who abstained from treatment and could have saved their hair and had no issue who didn't as a result of all these fallacious horror stories they heard. So anyways, that's all I wanted to say about that. And, I'll be back with more content soon. I wanted to actually talk a little bit more in depth about derma rolling. I know a lot of people ask me about that, and I have actually created videos about derma rolling before. And in short, I do like it, so I don't want to be like obscure about that, but I want to talk about more about like how I use it and what I think it's good for. So I'll be back with content about that soon. So in the meantime, I'll let you guys get back to your weekend. I'm gonna go play some Witcher 3, and I hope you guys are all having a good one. Take care.